Welcome back to educator.com. This lesson is on connecting decimals and fractions. Now, when we connect fractions to decimals and decimals to fractions, let's think about money. For fractions and decimals, I can represent each with a dollar. If I have half a dollar, 1/2 is half. If I have half a dollar, I have 50 cents. Now keep in mind that 0.5 is the same thing as 0.50 or 50 cents. When the numbers are after the decimal place, I can put as many zeros as I want and the number does not change. So I know that half a dollar is the same as 50 cents or 0.5. So 1/2 would be the same as 0.5. If I have 1/4 from a dollar, how can I divide the dollar up into 4 parts? 4 of what makes a dollar? And the answer is quarters, right? We know that 4 quarters make $1. So if I have 1 out of 4 quarters, if I have 1/4, then I have 25 cents or 0.25. Now, how about this one? What would I have if I divide the dollar up into 10 parts? I would have 1 dime. So 1/10 would be the same thing as having 1 dime, which is 0.1 or 0.10. Remember, this is the same as this. How about this one? If I divide up the dollar into 100 parts, then I would have 100 pennies, right? So 1 over having one of those parts, having 1 penny, is going to be 0.01 or 1 cent. So 1/100 is having 1 cent, 0.01. Now let's look at this again. This fraction right here, 3/4, I'm going to again relate it to the fraction 1/4. Remember 1/4? If I have 1 part out of the 4 that I divided the dollar into, then I have 1/4, right? Which is 0.25. This is the value of 1/4. If you look at this fraction, this is 3/4. So the dollar is still divided into 4 parts, which is still the quarter. So if I have 3/4, how much do I have? I have 0.75 or 75 cents. If I want to do this mathematically, I can take the 3 and divide it by 4. 3, this right here means divide. So 3 divided by 4. That means I can take 3 divided by 4. Now this is a whole number, so I have to put a decimal after it, and then I can add as many zeros as I want. Let's make this longer. So 4 goes into 30. Well, 4 goes into 3 0 times. I'm going to raise up this decimal. So 4 goes into 30 how many times? Let's see. 4 times 7 is 28. I'm going to subtract this. This is 2. Bring down this 0. 4 goes into 20 5 times. So if I want to convert 3 over 4, this fraction, into a decimal, I can just do 3 divided by 4. I'm still going to get the same answer of 0.75. But if I know that I can take this and think of the dollar, and I know I can divide the dollar into 4 parts, which is 4 quarters, and I have 3 of those parts, then I have 75 cents. Right here, 0.07. 0.07 is the same thing as 0.70, right? So 0.07 is the same thing as having 70 cents. Now, what gives me 70 cents? If I have 7 dimes, then I'll have 70 cents, right? So then I can say that this is having 7 over the value of a dime is 10 cents. So 7 over 10 would be the same thing as 70 cents. Now, if I want to just take this without relating it to the dollar and just convert it back to a fraction, I can take this number right here, 7. I'm going to count how many numbers I have after the decimal place, and it has to be after the decimal place. So 7, I only have one number. Take that number, place it over a 10, 1 0, because I have only one number after the decimal place, so I'm only going to have 1 0 here. Now let's go over more examples. Convert from fraction to decimal or decimal to fraction. Here we have a decimal, and I'm going to convert it to a fraction. Now, look, if I look at this, if I have 25 cents, I have 1 quarter, right? So 1 quarter would be having 1 quarter out of, how many quarters equal a dollar? 4, right? So having 1 quarter, 25 cents, or 0.25, is the same thing as 1 over 4. Another way to do this, I take the 25, I take this number, 25, okay, I'm going to make that into my numerator, and then I'm going to count how many numbers I have after the decimal place. I have 2 numbers. I have 1, 2. So then I'm going to put that many zeros after my 1 as my denominator. So this becomes 25 over 100. Now I have to simplify this because this fraction, I know that 25 can go into 100. So I'm going to take this 25, I'm going to divide by 25, and then I have to divide the bottom number by the same number, right? So 25 divided by 25 is 1. 100 divided by 25 is 4. So 0.25 is going to be the same thing as 1 over 4. The next example is a fraction, 3 over 10. So I can convert this into a decimal. Now, again, let's relate it to money. If I have 10 as my denominator, then what do I have? 10 parts to make a dollar would be 10 dimes. So I know that I'm working with dimes here. So if I have 3 dimes, then how much do I have? How can I write that into a decimal? I would have 30 cents, right? So having 3 dimes is the same thing as 30 cents, or 3 over 10 is the same thing as 0.30 or 0.3, because again, this is the same thing. I can put a 0 here because it's after the decimal place. Another way you can do this, just divide. 3 divided by 10, I have to add zeros at the end of it. 10 goes into 30 3 times, but I have to write it over the 0. And then I have to bring up my decimal. This becomes 30. If I subtract, I get 0. So 3 over 10, or 3 divided by 10, is going to be 0.3. This next example, 0.77, I'm going to convert this into a fraction. So if I have 0.77 or 77 cents, I have the same thing as 77 pennies, right? So again, I can write that number at the top, and then how many pennies are equal to $1? I know that 100 are equal to $1. So this is the same thing as saying I have 77 pennies. So 0.77 is the same thing as 77 over 100. Again, without thinking of money, I can just take this number, 77, as my numerator, count how many numbers I have after my decimal place, which is 2. That means I'm going to add 2 zeros, which is 100, as my denominator. And it is the same thing. Okay. So this fourth example here, I have a fraction and I'm going to convert this into a decimal. Now, this top number tells me how many I have, and this bottom number tells me how many out of 100 I have, or how many out of $1 I have. So if I have 100 parts to make $1, what do I have? I have the penny, right? Because 100 pennies equals $1. So I know that I have 9 of them. 9 out of 100 would be the same thing as having 9 pennies. So in order to write this as a decimal, if I have 9 pennies, how much do I have? I have 9 cents, which is written like that, right? So 9 out of 100 is the same thing as 0.09. Now you can also think of this as 9 divided by 100. So you can take 9 divided by 100, but since this is 100, I can do a shortcut here. So whenever my denominator is 10 or 100 or 1,000, any number that's a multiple of 10, all I'm going to do is take that top number, let's write that out, the top number is 9, and I'm going to count how many zeros I have here. So I have 1, I have 2 zeros, right? Since I have 2 zeros, I'm going to take that number 2 and I'm going to place this decimal point right there. The decimal point always goes after the number. And I'm going to move the decimal point 2 places. Okay, because again, there are 2 zeros here. If I had a 10, I only have 1 0, so I would only move it 1 place value. If I had 1,000, I would have 3 zeros, so I'd have to move it 3 place values. So again, I'm going to take this decimal point and I'm going to move it 2 place values going to the left. So I'm going to go 1 and 2. There's where my decimal point is going to go. And then I have a space right here, so I have to put a 0 right there. Now for this shortcut, you can only do that if the denominator is a multiple of 10. So it has to be 10, 100, or 1,000, and so on. Okay? Otherwise, you're going to have to do 9 divided by 100. And again, this sign right here means divide. So you can do 9 divided by 100 to change that into a decimal. But I also knew that this bottom number right here, it takes 100 pennies to make $1. So since it takes 100 pennies to make $1 and I have 9 of them, I would have 9 cents, and I can just write that as 0.09. Okay? So that's it for this lesson. Thank you for watching educator.com.